Picture the Mediterranean. Every beach you have ever seen in a travel photograph. The Greek islands, white buildings above blue water, the coast of Italy, the cliffs of Croatia, the harbour at Marseille, the water that every ancient civilization built itself around. The Romans called it Mare Nostrum, our sea, the sea at the centre of human history for as long as history has existed. 5,000 years of empires, traded goods, wars, migrations, and philosophies, all conducted on or around this body of water. 5 million years ago it was gone, not frozen, not lowered, gone, evaporated, dried out. What was left behind was not a seabed, it was a salt desert sitting 3 miles below sea level, the floor of an empty ocean basin baking under an African sun, surrounded by cliffs that made the Grand Canyon look like a ditch, with air temperatures on the floor that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. The water that fed Rome, carried Phoenician merchants, reflected the lighthouse at Alexandria, all of it absent. For 700,000 years, it was hell, literally. And then the Atlantic Ocean broke through the wall that had been holding it back. The Mediterranean is not a proper ocean. It is a trapped sea, almost entirely enclosed by land, connected to the Atlantic only through the Strait of Gibraltar, a gap barely 14 kilometers wide at its tightest point. 14 kilometers. That is the width of the English Channel at Dover. That is all that separates the Mediterranean from becoming a dead pool. Around 5.96 million years ago, that connection closed. The African and European tectonic plates shifted position, and the shallow sill at Gibraltar rose above sea level. The Atlantic was cut off. From this point, the Mediterranean had only one way to maintain itself: rainfall and the rivers flowing into it from Europe and Africa. It was not enough. The Mediterranean evaporates faster than its rivers can fill it. In a world where no Atlantic water was entering, the sea began to drop. Not gradually. At geological speeds, the descent was catastrophic. Within tens of thousands of years, the water level had fallen hundreds of meters. The shallow areas dried first. The entire floor of what is now the Adriatic exposed. The sea between Sicily and Tunisia gone. The eastern basin shrinking into isolated, increasingly salty lakes. The creatures that had lived in the Mediterranean for millions of years had nowhere to go. The fish, the marine mammals, the mollusks, the organisms at every level of the food chain. They died as the water retreated and concentrated and turned toxic with salt. Then the main basin went too. What was left was not a landscape. It was an abyss. The floor of the Mediterranean basin sits 3 miles below sea level. 3 miles of empty space between the bottom and where the ocean surface used to be. The cliffs of the surrounding continents dropped away into this void. Rivers that had previously flowed into the sea now fell off the edge of it, carving new canyons as they fell. The Nile cut a canyon 4 kilometers deep into its own bed, trying to reach the new water table. That canyon is still there, under Cairo right now, under every city built on the Nile Delta, filled with sediment for the last 5 million years, but real, present, measurable. The seismic surveys have confirmed it. You can look it up. On the floor, salt. Layer after layer of evaporate, gypsum, halite, and hydrite, piling up across the basin floor to depths of 3 kilometers in places. 3 kilometers of salt, deposited in annual cycles like tree rings, each layer representing one more year of the dying sea. This is the Messinian Salinity Crisis, and its geological signature is unmistakable in cores drilled from the Mediterranean floor. The chemistry of a dying ocean preserved in rock. For approximately 700,000 years, this was the Mediterranean. A vast, scalding salt desert at the bottom of the world, surrounded by vertical walls, baking in direct sunlight, with nothing living in it. Nothing could. Imagine you could stand on that floor. You are 3 miles below sea level. The cliffs of Europe and Africa rise 5 kilometers above you, more than 3 times the depth of the Grand Canyon. The sun rises late and sets early because the walls are in the way. The sky above you is a strip of blue framed by rock on both sides. The walls receding and blurring with distance until they disappear into haze. The temperature, estimates suggest 70 to 80 degrees Celsius at the basin floor. Ambient air. Not a fire, not direct sunlight on your skin. The air itself, superheated by the physics of enclosed basins at depth and the lack of any cooling ocean to moderate it. Death Valley in California, the hottest place regularly measured on Earth, sits at 86 meters below sea level and reaches 56 degrees Celsius on its worst days. You are 60 times deeper than Death Valley. The heat compounds. The ground under your feet is white, salt crystals, meters deep, deposited over hundreds of thousands of years of evaporation. The white plain extends to the horizon in every direction. The rivers from Europe and Africa are still running. Waterfalls somewhere above and behind you, falling off the rim of the basin, but they evaporate before reaching the floor. All that continental river water, falling thousands of meters, is gone before it lands. Nothing moves. No wind at depth in a closed basin. No waves. The silence would be absolute except for the slow thermal expansion and contraction of the rock around you. This is where the Mediterranean was for 700,000 years. This is the floor that the Atlantic drowned. Then, 5.33 million years ago, the Atlantic came back. The exact mechanism is still debated among geologists. A gradual erosion of the rock sill at Gibraltar, a seismic event that fractured the barrier, a sea level rise that finally topped the lowest point. Whatever the mechanism, at some moment, a geological moment that may have begun in hours or days, Atlantic seawater found a path through the rock and began flowing downhill. What followed was the largest flood in the history of this planet. The water poured through the gap and fell 3 miles. A waterfall of seawater dropping into an empty basin. The energy generated on impact, calculable from the volume of water and the height of the fall, would have produced a roar audible across the continent. The impact mist would have risen kilometers into the atmosphere. The basin floor, hammered by falling seawater at enormous velocity, would have been scoured down to bedrock in the impact zone. Calculations suggest the Mediterranean refilled in somewhere between a few hundred and a few thousand years, a geological instant. At peak flow, the water rose at rates measured in meters per day. Every species that had colonized the salt flats, every extremophile organism that had found a way to survive on the crusted basin floor, was drowned under thousands of meters of cold Atlantic seawater within a human lifetime. The Zanclean Flood. The moment the geological record shows a sharp line from evaporates to marine sediments. The moment the dying sea became an ocean again. Here is what the Messinian Crisis left inside your world. The canyon under the Nile, 4 kilometers deep, 900 kilometers long, is still there. Cairo is built over it. The Nile Delta is sitting on top of it. The oil and gas reservoirs under the Mediterranean are trapped by the evaporate layers deposited during the crisis. Salt makes excellent caprock, impermeable and stable. The energy industry drills through them every day. The marine species in the Mediterranean today are not the descendants of the animals that lived there before the crisis. Those animals died. The current ones are Atlantic species, descended from organisms that moved in after the Zanclean refill. The Mediterranean that feels ancient, the sea of the Romans, the Phoenicians, the Greeks, is 5 million years old. Before that, there was nothing there but heat and salt and silence. Every wave that has ever lapped at the shore of Italy or Greece has been a consequence of a catastrophe that happened so long before the first human being walked the shore that no memory of it survived into our species. But the rock remembered. The rock always remembers. The Messinian Crisis did not kill everything in the Mediterranean. Some organisms survived the concentration of salt, the loss of depth, the retreat of the water into isolated pools. Extremophile bacteria and archaea, the same categories of microorganism that live today in hypersaline lakes, in hot springs, in acid mine drainage, colonized the evaporate flats. The evidence for their presence is in the chemistry of the salt layers themselves, subtle signatures of microbial activity recorded in the mineralogy of the deposits. Life did not leave the Mediterranean entirely. It just became unrecognizable. The fish, the marine mammals, the complex ecosystems of a functioning sea, those did not survive. The fossil record shows a sharp break at the Messinian boundary. Below it, diverse marine fauna from a normal ocean. Above it, nothing, until the Zanclean refill begins. An ocean that had been biologically complex for millions of years was reduced, in geological terms, to a sterile salt flat, interrupted only by microbial mats. The diversity that had accumulated over millions of years of evolution was erased in tens of thousands. When the Atlantic refilled the basin, the organisms that colonized it came from the Atlantic. The Mediterranean today is an Atlantic Sea, populated by Atlantic lineages, descended from organisms that came through Gibraltar after the Zanclean Flood. The species that lived in the pre-Messinian Mediterranean are gone. Their evolutionary descendants, if any survived in Atlantic refugia, have been mixed beyond individual recognition into the broader Atlantic gene pool. The specific biological community of the ancient Mediterranean, the ecosystem that existed for millions of years before the crisis, did not come back. something new took its place. This is what a mass extinction event looks like at the ecosystem level. Not just species dying, but an entire, complex, interconnected biological community being replaced wholesale by a new one. The individual extinctions are the mechanism. The replacement of the whole is the outcome. And the outcome is so complete that when you swim in the Mediterranean today, you are in an Atlantic Ocean wearing a Mediterranean name, populated by organisms whose recent ancestors swam through Gibraltar after the greatest flood this planet has ever seen.